Good to go?
Go.
Brilliant. Good evening, everybody. I'm Leonié Watson. I'm Director of Accessibility and Web Development at Nemensa. As Jonathan mentioned, part of the team that worked on VS 8878. Do a bit of work with the W3C as an invited expert on the unmentionable guidelines that are not the be-all and end-all of accessibility, even if they are a good place to start. And I'd like to spend a few minutes this evening talking to you about what I think accessibility is and isn't, starting with the basic concept that it is part of user experience, and trust me, it really isn't a swear word. Accessibility, for me, is very much part of user experience, and I think that's a message that Jonathan really began to talk about in his presentation. It doesn't exist in isolation. It shouldn't exist in isolation. You guys will know this as well as I do, that if something isn't accessible to someone, quite simply, it isn't going to be usable by them either. So accessibility really does need to be part of everybody's toolkit, whether you consider yourself to be an accessibility consultant, a user experience consultant, usability consultant, developer, designer. Accessibility needs to be part of all our toolkits so that we can deliver the brilliant user experiences that our clients and the companies we work with have really come to expect. Accessibility isn't anti-creativity. Quite often when you mention the accessibility word, the A word, people are like, oh my god, text-only websites, it's all going to be black and white, we're all going to design hell in an accessibility handcart. It really isn't that bad. On the slide at the moment, there's a screenshot from a website that some of my team at Nemensa are working on as a kind of pet project. And one of their kind of ambitions with this project was to really take it out there and see what could be done creatively as well as accessibly and usability. And the website is coming soon in the next few weeks. But I guess if I could take one message out to people, it would be, let's go out there and create experiences that are beautiful, engaging, interactive, accessible and usable. A friend of mine who actually works in a completely different industry has a brilliant phrase, design like you give a damn, and let's get out there and really do that, because I think that's what it's all about. Accessibility is big for business. Actually, accessibility itself is quite a big business. 10 years ago, when I got going in the industry, there were a handful of companies providing accessibility and usability consultancy, fewer still that were doing end-to-end web development or digital development with those principles behind their processes. Now, of course, it's a thriving industry with companies of all shapes and sizes, freelancers and practitioners all around the world doing really great stuff. But over those 10 years, the conversations have changed as well. We're not explaining to companies and organisations now what accessibility is. We're explaining how to go out there and how to achieve it. And some really big organisations are taking this stuff very seriously. There are groups within organisations like the United Nations, Procter & Gamble, Lloyd's TSB, B-Sky-B, as Jonathan mentioned, the BBC, and of course Vodafone by the fact that they're here and sponsoring this tonight. Really pushing accessibility and inclusion up the corporate agenda. So it makes sense for us as practitioners to make accessibility part of our toolkit so that we can engage with those companies and get paid by them at the end of the project. Always a good thing. Accessibility isn't about screen readers. Well, it is, but it's not completely about screen reader users. We've rather become the poster children for accessibility over the years. If you ask a lot of people what they think accessibility is all about, they'll say, well, it's about making it accessible for blind people. We do undoubtedly face a lot of challenges when we're accessing websites with our screen readers, but we're not the only ones. There are people with learning disabilities, mobility disabilities, hearing impairments, all of whom face challenges on the web, as well as people who are just maybe a little older and not quite as fast on their kind of hand-to-eye coordination as they used to be. Disability is about a lot more than just screen reader users. So when you're thinking about putting together your testing strategy for usability testing, it's really important to bring in people who have different requirements, different disabilities into that testing strategy to give you a really comprehensive gathering of information. Accessibility is really part of a process. whether you're looking at your information architecture, you're developing your wireframes, translating those into designs, or taking it beyond into technical development. Accessibility is something that needs to be woven into the narrative right the way through the process. And if you can build in testing with people throughout as many of those kind of key stages of the development life cycle as possible, that's really going to strengthen the likelihood that what you come out with at the end is a really brilliant and accessible and usable user experience. So bringing in that testing, test your IA, test your wireframes, test your creative designs, even if it's just a light touch, but get out there, test often, fix frequently, and spend less, ultimately, is not a bad mantra to go by. Accessibility, though, isn't always obvious. How often do you take a look at, say, a group of participants you've got for usability testing and wonder, I wonder if anyone has maybe mild dyslexia? They're colourblind, they have some other condition that's completely unseen, but nevertheless has an effect on the way they interact with the website that you're testing. It's worth considering that, both in terms of next time you're doing usability testing with a quote, mainstream audience, just asking anyone if they have any condition like that that does impact the way they experience, and ask them if they'd be prepared to share some of that experience, both to see how often those kind of situations crop up in the kind of general population, if you like, but also just to gather some really kind of useful insights. Disability isn't always about a white cane or a wheelchair. It's quite often much more subtle than that, and that's an important thing to think about. Accessibility is worth it. Still, quite often I find myself having to kind of make the case for accessibility, if you like, for inclusive design. And I guess many of you will find yourselves in the same situation with your clients. So there's kind of 4 reasons that I really tend to sort of put out there, some of which Jonathan touched on in his presentation. It's good for business, no matter what kind of business you're in. Quite simply, accessibility and inclusive design is about getting people to a website and enabling them to use it effectively and preferably enjoyably. So more people on your website doing things effectively and enjoyably means potentially more revenue, maybe more donations for your cause, maybe just a further reach for your information. But in any case, it's just a win situation. It's a legal requirement. The Equality Act 2010 replaced the Disability Discrimination Act in the UK, everywhere except Northern Ireland, which retains the DDA. And both pieces of legislation make it a legal requirement to make sure that services, including websites and digital services, are accessible to people with disabilities. It's good for SEO. It's not going to give you, instant superhero SEO status, but a big part of accessibility is providing stuff in alternative formats. A search engine can't tell you what's inside a video, can't tell you what's in an audio stream or an image, but by providing a text alternative, captions, text descriptions, you're making that information available to a search engine as well as to people with disabilities. So that really can have quite a good impact on your SEO strategy. Last reason I always give, and it's kind of my favourite, is that it's just feel good. It's the right thing to do. Let's get out there and get it right. It feels good to be building something that's going to be really engaging and exciting, but from your client's point of view, that has a much more strong commercial effect as well. It builds brand loyalty, and I can say this from personal experience as well as professional. If I can go to a website and do something that I enjoy doing, it's a pleasure to go and use that website, I'll keep going back there. I'm not going to go to use a website that just puts me through no end of trauma just because I want to buy a pair of shoes. I will tell other people who are blind or partially sighted about the experience I've had. And that's PR that you really can't buy. It's absolute gold dust, just because you've been thinking about experience and accessibility. So accessibility really isn't a swear word. It's important. It needs to be part of all our toolkits. It's big business. It's about all kinds of people, all kinds of disabilities, all kinds of requirements. It can be creative. It really is part of user experience and delivering fantastic user experiences. It isn't a swear word, even though it is sometimes shortened to a 4-letter word in the A11Y hashtag. So please, thank you very much for listening, and let's continue this conversation because I think it's really important. Contact details are up there on the screen, so if not tonight, then tweet me.
I'm just crashed. Wait. Here we go, Liz, we got it. Hey.
So do, tweet me, email me, whatever, because I think it's really important that we all keep talking, keep swapping ideas, knowledge, experiences, and that's the way we're going to get out there and do that design like you give a damn. Thanks.